Another pattern that's emerged over recent decades is the rising age of farmers. The average farmer is 57 years old, according to the USDA, and a growing share are past retirement age. These are farmers who've worked hard their whole lives and are finally making some good money. They're more likely to own the land they farm, and although time is working against them, they're in no hurry to give it up.
The farm was first purchased by my great-grandfather. He farmed it, his son farmed it after him, then my dad, then me. I'm kind of the last guy on the chain.
Bob Hawthorne farms 2,000 acres of corn and soybeans in the Luss Hills of western Iowa. He's been doing it 60 years, and at the age of 84, he has no plans to slow down. It runs in the family. His father, Fred Hawthorne, stayed active on the farm into his 90s and lived to be 98, so Bob feels like he's still got plenty of time left to work.
I'd be bored not having anything to do. Now, I've also noticed that farmers, when they retire, buy a house in town, move into town, they die of a heart attack about the next year. It seems like farmers have to keep going, active, or they just fade away.
Hawthorne is part of a growing group of farmers. In fact, farmers over 65 years old have been the fastest growing group of farmers in the country. Working beyond retirement is a national trend. In 2012, 5% of the U.S. workforce was old enough to retire, but a quarter of all farm operators were over 65. When it comes down to it, it's just easier for farmers to work longer.
It's not quite as backbreaking a task as it used to be. Well, it isn't. It's more you use your mind rather than your back, so you can go longer.
And thanks to higher yields at today's high grain prices, farming is more lucrative now than just about any time since Bob Hawthorne came back to the farm in 1955. But in surveys of Iowa farmers, Mike Duffy has learned regardless of the money or new technology, some farmers will just never quit.
Farmers are farmers, and that's who they are, and that's who they identify themselves as, and so they don't, that's like retiring from who you are. They'll leave horizontal, and that's just, that's who farmers are.
I think what keeps older farmers going is the fear that if I don't keep going, there's nothing left for me to make me feel like I'm contributing and am a valuable person. That keeps a lot of farmers continuing, even perhaps when their bodies say we should quit this.
Psychologist Mike Roseman calls it the agrarian imperative. It's something he knows personally as a retired farmer himself. It's the kind of determination to keep farming that causes Bob Hawthorne to push back when neighbors ask about retirement.
They keep bugging me and say, "Oh, when are you going to quit?" I think I'd tell them I won't quit farming until all hell freezes over, or something like that.
But even as farmers take the long view on their careers, there may be some things they don't see coming.
We know the incidences of injuries and occupation-related illnesses is higher for agriculture than almost any other occupation. Aging farmers are losing their friends. Sometimes they're losing health, and they're more prone to depression and even in some cases suicide, from what we know from the data.
Decide if that's where they want to go. And
access to care is a problem in many rural areas. The Nebraska Rural Response Hotline has been helping farmers and their families find counseling since the farm crisis of the 1980s. But many don't get the help they need. Studies have found the risk of suicide is 60% higher for farmers than the rest of the population. Studies also show a surprising number of farmers work late into their careers without a plan for how it will eventually end.
Over half of aging farmers don't have a will or an estate plan, and I think it reflects what you and I are discussing, and that is perhaps a denial of the fact that somebody's got to take over and I need to have a plan for that.
The plans older farmers make have larger implications because more often than not, they own the land they're working. That means farmers like Bob Hawthorne hold a big piece to the future of farming. Mike Duffy describes the trend in Iowa.
In the early 80s, about 10%, 12% of the land was owned by people over 75.
Now, nearly a third of Iowa farmland belongs to people over 75. But those landowners know their neighbors are watching and waiting.
Where you see tensions is in communities, people trying to bid for land and outbid each other, and going to retirement homes and going to funerals and asking widows if, offering to rent their land, and, all kinds of nonsense like that. To some extent, it's competition among businesses, but to some extent, it's very cutthroat and it leaves bad feelings.
Bob Hawthorne does wonder what will happen to his family's farm. He knows one thing: after 4 generations, the Hawthorne family farm ends here. He has no children of his own. He never married. What will happen? It's a big question, and not one he seems ready to answer. Not just yet.
When I look overhead, I see a lot of vultures circling and descending on me. They can't wait until I retire, I die, or become physically or mentally incompetent to run the farm, so they get their greedy hands on my farmland. Every farm wants to grab more land because it's not big enough. I never heard of any farm that wants to sell some land because it's got too much.